Welcome to DC. You know we're out at the USA Cup. You're taking it slightly, I'm taking it slightly. Now how you throw apple, you gon' be right back. Well, we gon' be right here, we gon' be right here. We ain't going nowhere. Welcome to DC. DC, the home of Chuck Brown. Oh, you don't know the sound? Well, let me break it down. The G.O., the G.O.
This is the Big Douglas Show. It is an Opposition Wednesday, and for that, we have brought in Sam Mellinger from the Kansas City Star. Sam, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for giving us a little time today.
Sure.
So before we get into the product on the field, I thought we'd just chat for a second. I'm curious. I know you have a podcast. I know you've been writing for the Star for a long time. Which one do you prefer the most?
Probably the writing. It's kind of what I grew up doing and what I'm more comfortable with. But the podcast, I mean, you know how it goes, right? Like every week you just get a little bit more comfortable and a little bit, feel like you're building those connections another way. So it's been cool.
You I'm from the East Coast, and so I must admit that the middle of America is not in my wheelhouse. So, but my granny, God rest her soul, was from Iowa, and she said Missouri. Now, I know you're from Kansas and then are in, I think, Missouri. Now, who says Missouri and who says Missouri? And is that a thing anymore?
It is a thing. Yeah. It's kind of a laughable thing at times, like especially when somebody's introduced to Kansas City for the first time with, like a Chiefs player or Royals player. And it's a thing. I think for the most part, Missouri is more Kansas City and St. Louis. And I think Missouri is a lot of the rest of the state.
Okay. So like farmland is Missouri, the country is Missouri.
Yeah. There's a lot of, there's Jeff City and Columbia and Springfield and stuff, but a lot of towns that are probably, 50,000 or fewer people. I think there's a lot of Missouri.
I love that. What, spare or baby back ribs?
Spare. I'm a spare guy. I like the meatier. I think if you cook them right, I think the spare is the way to go. The baby backs, either one, right? Like I'm not gonna kick any rib out of bed, you know what I mean? But yeah, I like the little meatier, especially if I'm cooking them. I like it meatier like that.
And wet or dry rub? Wet.
Yeah, I respect the dry, but I've gotten into a habit. I consider myself, I like to cook a rib. This is you're hitting a good part with me. It's a strong hobby with me. And I like putting sauce on it and finishing it on the grill. Not everybody does that, some purists, whatever, but I think it adds something to it. Then you don't need sauce later, then they're just ready, right when you serve them. But I respect all kinds.
Old guys tell me all the time you're supposed to boil the ribs first.
No.
Don't do that, right?
Yeah, no. The last thing I said was I respect all kinds. I take that back.
You got to draw a limit somewhere.
I respect most kinds.
I also saw when doing a little research that this is dear to my heart, are a PBJ enthusiast.
Yes. Yeah.
So Mitch Tischler from NBC Sports Washington will appreciate this because we have this conversation. So tell me what the best way for a PBJ is, and I'll tell you if you're right or not.
Okay, good. So I feel that the bread is an underrated part of this. I think that people concentrate on crunchy or creamy and strawberry or grape and all that stuff. I think the bread is really important. And my thing is there's the grocery store that's a couple blocks away from here, from where I live. There's just store brand bread. I think store brand bread and tortilla chips are the way to go. Those things you can't miss with those things. And it's store brand. We usually go wheat and white for an event, white for an anniversary.
You're showing off.
But yeah, exactly. But that soft, not too soft. Like my thing is if you make the peanut butter and jelly sandwich and it's ruined, like if the jelly and stuff soaks through it within like 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes, your bread's too soft. And if you make it and it hasn't soaked in after like 45 minutes, you got the wrong kind of bread. There's a space in the middle there. And I'm a strong strawberry guy. And I like crunchy.
Preserves or jelly?
Jelly.
I'm a I'm a preserves guy. I prefer.
I do respect preserves, but I need it to be strawberry.
Okay. Yeah, I prefer strawberry on my PBJ.
Yeah,
Peanut butter, you're a smooth or crunchy. I'm a crunchy guy. Although Reese's peanut butter makes actual peanut butter. If you've never had it, it's worth ponying up for, and it's smooth.
That sounds amazing.
It's the only way I eat.
Is there chocolate in it?
No, there's no chocolate in it. It's just the peanut butter.
Is it the peanut butter that they use
Reese's
in the
peanut
cups?
butter makes a peanut butter in a jar that you can get that's in the
This
cup.
is information relevant to my interest.
Right.
Thank you.
And I prefer at least once in a while to make a PBJ out of 2 Eggo waffles.
Wow.
Now we're in business.
You cook the waffles?
Slam them in the toaster.
Okay.
Get them a little crispy. Jelly on one side, PB on the other side. Cut it in half. I mean, you could pick up the whole thing and just look like a real man, but I would suggest cutting in halves or quartering it. But
wow,
treat
that
yourself,
is a strong move.
Treat yourself. You have to.
Is that just like a Friday thing? Like, or are you'll just do that on Tuesday?
Just depends on what your evening looks like.
Wow, good for you.
Sam, I know you have done all kinds of things now covering sports, baseball, football, Olympics.
Yeah. I'm
curious which ones you love the most.
And
is it
the
fair
Olympics?
To ask you that?
Yeah. I mean, the Olympics is kind of I think literally for me now, a once in a lifetime thing with what COVID has done, all our travel budgets and stuff like that. That was incredible. But I've said this to a couple of people, like I could do this job for 100 more years if they'll let me, and God willing, right, and never have as much fun as I had in 2014 and 15 when the Royals went to the World Series and then won it the next series. It was just this overwhelming. And keep in mind, the Chiefs hadn't been, legit Super Bowl contenders by then, and there just hadn't been. Like Kansas City had sort of been defined by their teams either suck or their teams kick them in the teeth, at the worst moment. And like it was just this breakthrough. It was like this wave of emotion, and it happened again. 4 years later, I guess, with the Super Bowl. It was somewhat similar, but there was something about it. It was just this break of like there hadn't been a championship in this town in 30 years between the Royals and the Chiefs. And a lot of dark times in there mixed in from both teams, from both the Royals and Chiefs. So it was an overwhelming emotional experience, like for this whole town. It was crazy.
When the Chiefs come into town, I'll tell you from a Washington / Redskins perspective, there'll be a lot of people disappointed that we're the only ones moving and changing, if you will. What is the league? Has the league said anything about doing the chop? Like I think the Braves quit doing the chop, and I know the Blackhawks have said they're not changing.
Yeah.
Has the league reached out to the Chiefs and said anything about this, or no, or how does that look?
Yeah. Not to my knowledge. And this has been. I'd imagine like fans here are thinking about it similarly to how fans there in DC. And I mean, let's be honest, all across the country, there's Redskins fans, right? But they're very protective of it. The Chiefs are, for a lot of reasons. Clark Hunt, the owner, is very much a traditionalist. He likes history. He likes tradition. They changed, and it's kind of phony, but they changed the chop. What do they call it? It's not the tomahawk chop. It might be called the arrowhead chop now or something like that. And instead of this, it's a closed fist, Doug. It's closed fist. That makes all the difference in the world. Closed fist to signify like banging the drum, because they're keeping the war drum is now a central part of how they're going forward. They do the chop every before, like at kickoff, right before every game, and then there's usually a time or two again throughout the game where it happens. They've done some stuff. They used to have a horse war paint. They had a horse on the field. They don't do that anymore. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but mostly they altered the chop, and they banned headdresses or war bonnets. You can't do that. You can't, no face paint that appropriates Native American culture. And they've really done, like, the biggest thing is they've kind of wrapped their arms around some groups of Native Americans, and had, like, sort of brought them in. How can we promote and how can we celebrate while still keeping the name? So we've written about this pretty extensively off and on, like when things happen. And the last round was when, when they no longer were the Redskins, right? The Chiefs are pretty adamant that they'll keep the name. They think Chiefs is, not derogatory, a celebration, that kind of thing. So at least for now, that's how it is.
Well, and in fairness, if it was widely known that if Dan Snyder had the opportunity to change the team name from Redskins to Warriors before the Warriors got good, and he probably could have kept, the Native American head on the side, but stubbornness.
Yeah,
I think we all know what that leads to. But yeah, he refused, and now I don't think they'll get any of it. You had mentioned it, if you've covered the Chiefs for as long as you have, you've gone through different waves. It's got to be interesting to cover the face of the league right now. I mean, what is it like covering Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah, I mean, for the first year, it was honestly surreal, because for as long as, the whole history of the Chiefs organization is taking somebody else's, a quarterback that wasn't good enough somewhere else, and bringing him in. Even, all the way back to Lynn Dawson. Lynn Dawson was brought in. And then, through the 90s, it's, Steve DeBerg and Joe Montana, Trent Green, Matt Castle. I'm obviously getting into the 2000s now, but it was just always somebody else's backup. And a lot of times from the 49ers too. Elvis Gerbach, Steve Bono, it was bad. Matt Castle had the one year when Brady tore his knee, ironically a hit against the Chiefs. Bernard Pollard got him. And then, Matt Castle went, what'd they go, 11-5? I think they were 11-5, and one of the few 11-win teams that's ever not made the playoffs. And then the next year they hired Scott Pioli is the GM. Scott brings in Castle to be the quarterback. And it was always that. Then Alex Smith, again, from the 49ers. And it was just, they hadn't used a first round pick on a quarterback in 30 years, since Todd Blackledge, in the 83 draft, that produced a quarterback or two. And it was just, that's how the Chiefs are going to do it. It was throughout different GMs and different coaches. And they all had it seemed like the same philosophy. And then for the Chiefs, forget how good he is now, but for the Chiefs to do the move that they did, to trade up from, I think, 27 to 10 to take their guy, to take their quarterback, was so out of character for what this franchise had been, especially when they had a good team. They had lost in the division round the year before, and a lot of people thought they're a linebacker away. They just got to stop the run, and then they can get to the Super Bowl with the same group. And they basically said, nope, we're going to sort of not take a step back, but we're not going to go all in on 2017 because we think we've got a special player. And look, you started hearing things about this guy immediately in practice. And I know a couple of people in the organization, and once in a while they'd send me like a little clip from practice of just these, it's the stuff that you see on Sundays now, and it was just like, oh my God, like I haven't seen that from a quarterback, let alone, forget about a Chiefs quarterback. I haven't seen like any quarterback do some of this stuff, the no looks and just all the stuff. And then when he started playing, my expectation was that I thought he could be this good, honestly, just the way that people were talking about him. But I thought it would take a few years, you know what I mean? Like I thought he'd have a 16 interception, 20 interception kind of season as a rookie or something. And for him to be that good right away, and the brain, he's so smart. He processes stuff so quickly. It's been really crazy. People in Kansas City are starting to get used to it a little bit. 2-3 is freaking people out, whereas 2-3 used to be fine. If we're being honest.
Well, we're two teams at 2-3 that have totally different ideas or thoughts on what 2-3 looks like.
Yeah,
I'm curious. I've seen just by peeking around, and it happens in Washington too. 2-3 and the team's not doing well, and the head coach all of a sudden is on the hot seat. Yeah. Andy can't be on the hot seat though.
No.
Right?
No. The defensive coordinator, on the other hand, people want his head on a stick. And the safety, Daniel Sorensen, has had just a brutal go. Just absolutely terrible.
What happened to the rookie there? Didn't they have a rookie back there playing free safety? Is he hurt?
Yeah, Juan Thornhill.
Yeah.
Juan Thornhill was their second round pick in 2019, and he was terrific. He was a really good player.
Yeah, I liked him at the time.
Yeah, got good range and athleticism, and then he tore his knee. It was either the last or the second to last game of that regular season, and obviously they went on to win the Super Bowl. He played last season, but just wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't happening. Like he just physically, and you know how it is. Like some guys can heal physically, but they still need to trust it, and it just didn't happen for him last year. And then this year, I thought he'd play a lot more. I think there's got to be a reason that he hasn't been playing, something that we're not seeing, something in practice or meetings or whatever. I actually think that's going to start to change. I think Juan will start to play a little bit more now, starting with this game, actually. But yeah, Daniel Sorensen, he's, been in the system and he's got all that stuff going, but God, he'll blow some coverages and give up some long touchdowns that teams shouldn't be giving up.
And the corners are not stellar. I was looking at the roster getting ready for the game on Sunday, and I mean, really, other than Matthew and the two D linemen, Clark and Jones, they're not household names on the defense. Let's say that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The corners, they were short coming into the season on depth, and a lot of people, me included, thought they should have tried to find a way to bring back Bashaud Breeland, who's not Deion Sanders, right? But
he's in Washington. I'm familiar with Breeland.
Yeah,
He's a good player.
Yeah. He's a starting cornerback,
Yes.
And so they didn't have depth in the beginning, and then Charvarius Ward, who again, not Deion Sanders, but a starting caliber cornerback in the NFL, and he's been hurt, and I don't know if he's going to play on Sunday or not. My guess is that he won't, but that's hurt them a lot. And again, you know how this stuff goes. They're not getting any sort of pass rush. I mean, they got nothing. Chris Jones missed the Buffalo game. He's got a wrist injury. I think he'll play Sunday. I don't know that, but it sounds like he might. And Chris Jones is a stud. But after that, it's hard. I think Treshaun Ward,
he's been a disappointment since he got there from Seattle, right?
Frank Clark, yeah. He was really good the first year. He had some injury stuff. And then he was really good in the postseason. Like he's one of, there's a few guys you could say this about, most obviously the quarterback, but he's one of the guys that they would not have won the Super Bowl without. I mean, he was absolutely critical. He played great in the Super Bowl, getting pressures and stuff like that. And since then he just hasn't, I think he's played twice this season. He played against Buffalo and Baltimore and has missed the other 3 games with a hamstring injury. And it's not happening with him. And he's got like a $37 million cap number this year. I think he's the 3rd highest paid defensive player in the league right now. And that the contract he signed was a 3-year deal, right? And then it's a 5-year deal, but 3 basically that are guaranteed. And I think they'll cut him after this season. I think they can save something like $13 million off the cap, but he's, that's just been, again, I mean, they won a Super Bowl with him. So you can't say it was just like a terrible boneheaded deal, but they gave up a bunch of picks and they paid him a bunch of money, and now he kind of stinks. So, that's been a problem.
With Gruden out, I would assume that Bieniemy would be on the top of the Raiders list.
Yeah.
Tell me, because from the outside, I don't get it. It would seem like he had more opportunities and certainly a shot.
Yeah.
What do you guys see from, they're really close to the team as to why he just hasn't found a home there?
Yeah, I think he's interviewed for 14 jobs.
Incredible.
And he's 0 for 14. So, look, he is beloved by his players. I mean, the way players are going to say stuff, but like this stuff is genuine. They really love him. And he's hard on them too. Not in a ridiculous way, but he's not afraid to yell at a guy. I have a lot of respect for coaches that demand a lot, but still their players love them. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's a hard thing to pull off sometimes. And he's done it. The only explanation that makes sense to me that I've heard is just there must be something about the plan that he presents in the interview for how he'd run the program that is just underwhelming. That's the only thing. And look, like the winds changed on him a little bit. He took the path that has produced a whole bunch of head coaches, including working for Andy Reid, right? Like one former Andy Reid assistant is there in Washington. And but then it became quarterback coaches. And Eric Bieniemy is an old running backs coach. He's an old running back and an old running backs coach. And so, now everybody wants, it's the Sean McVay, it's the young and handsome, all that stuff. And Bieniemy's, cut a little bit differently. But I think he's overqualified to be a head coach. I mean, especially when you look at what Andy Reid assistants have done. Nobody's got a perfect record, right? But Ron Rivera and John Harbaugh have won Super Bowls, and Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl. He deserves a chance, and I keep expecting him to get one, but I've been expecting it for 2 or 3 seasons,
Yeah, it's wild. I don't think people probably realize this unless you've been a journalist or a writer or just kind of enjoy what it is that y'all do. How many stories did you have ready to go when halftime hits on that Sunday night game when the rain starts? Because I don't think people realize this, right? You've got to have a couple stories ready to go because you don't know what the outcome of the game is going to be. How much time do you have? So that's one question. Let's follow up with how much time do you have after the game's over to get those things in?
Well, my usual process is I do like basically this an instant reaction is what we call it. And I file that on Sunday. To answer your question, on Sunday, I probably had 80% of it written at halftime. It was a long halftime. It was an hour and 15-minute halftime. We had some lightning. That one's different, right? Like there's some games, the Browns game comes to mind, the Chargers game where, a lot of the NFL games, right, go down to the last play or the last few minutes, and then it becomes a little bit harder. But yeah, I usually send something in right within, if not before the end of the game, when it's a blowout, within 5 minutes, sort of. And look, I don't try to be Ernest Hemingway with that one. It's just sort of like what it says. Like it's just an instant reaction. Like I haven't been able to obviously rewatch the game or talk to people yet, but this is how I feel in the moment. And then you go downstairs and you talk to people and hopefully, get a little bit better context.
Switching back a little bit to the team and roster construction, is paying a quarterback like Mahomes? I mean, you got to pay him. I don't think anybody's not standing in line to pay him. Sure. But it makes somebody else's job really hard, right? To build a team when you're stroking that much money. Is that what we're seeing early on here, or is it just a scheme fit on the defense that isn't working out? What is it right now that leads you to 2-3, other than not, you played some good teams. I think people don't realize how good that Chargers team is.
The Chargers are great. I mean, they have. I mean, they've played probably the best 3 teams in the AFC, right? Maybe am I forgetting about anybody? I mean, Chargers, Ravens, Browns,
Bills. I mean, it's Browns,
Chargers, and Bills. Yeah, they probably played the four best teams in the AFC. But the problem is they were supposed to be the best team in the AFC, right. And now they're not. I don't think it's Mahomes' contract for a couple of reasons. One, the really big money hasn't started yet. But I think more to the point, it's turnovers, man. They've turned the ball over 4 times twice. And they turned it over twice in the other game that they lost. And really ill-timed. I mean, like if Clyde Edwards-Helaire doesn't fumble the ball at the end, and he did, so it doesn't, it doesn't matter. But if they would have had a game-winning field goal. Harrison Butker is one of the best kickers in the league. I mean, he was going to make that kick. But they've just, against the Chargers, they turned it over on their first 3 drives, and they were moving the ball every time. I mean, they were going right down the field, and it's a combination. Mahomes has had 2 passes bounce off receivers and be intercepted, including a pick 6 that went off Tyreek Hill's hands against the Bills. And he's also, he says this isn't true, but I think it is, that he knows that he's not stupid. He knows what the defense is doing. And I think that he's sort of, that risk reward calculus is a little bit pushed right now, because I think, and look, he's not necessarily wrong, right? Like an interception is not materially different than a punt sometimes with this defense, because they're going to give it up anyway. So, he took a chance on a first down play to Josh Gordon on Sunday night that was just like, he never would have done that in the past. He'll push it and he'll throw downfield and he'll take some chances and all that. But I don't think people realize this. He led the league in interception percentage last year. He had the lowest interception percentage in the league last year. So this is not Brett Favre, just throwing it blindly down the field. But I do think that he's changed a little bit. And there's also teams are playing them differently. And a lot of their offense is, sight reads, which is, the jargon for a receiver after the snap makes a decision on which route.
Choice routes.
Yeah. Choice routes, sight reads. Yeah. And they do a lot of that. And it's part of why they're so effective. But I think it's also led to a couple of those interceptions this year when the quarterback and the receiver are not seeing the same thing or not making the same decision. So they need to get that cleaned up. But, mostly the problem is not Mahomes' contract, which this sounds ridiculous because it's a $500 million contract, but it's actually a little club friendly because they've got some mechanisms in there to create more cap space when they need it. And I know that sounds ridiculous. It's $500 million, but it's really, he could have got more, you know what I mean? So
like I said, there would have been no shortage of teams lining up to have paid him that. So
yeah. The problem is the tackling. The problem is the pass rush. It's everything except for the offense.
It's early in the week. What does the injury report look like for Sunday? If you had to, I know we're not in the business of guessing, but I mean, what does it kind of look like?
So Andy gave the first sort of preliminary deal today, and there are a lot of names on there. But I think a lot of them are guys that are going to play. For instance, like Joe Tooney, who they just signed to be the left guard. He's a really good player, and he broke a bone in his hand in the Buffalo game, but played with it, finished the game. So he's on the injury report. They're not going to practice him, but he's a guy I would expect to play. You know what I mean? Tyreek Hill has I can't remember if it's a hammy or a quad contusion. He finished the game. I would expect him to play. Chris Jones is on the list with a wrist injury that kept him out against Buffalo. You can speculate either way on whether he'll play. Trivarius Ward, the cornerback that we talked about. Trying to think who else was on there. Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
He actually went to IR, right? So I mean,
MCL strain, I think they called it. So he's on IR. He's on IR. Will miss at least 3 weeks. But Darrell Williams he's not as good as Edwards-Helaire, but he's a running back. He can play. So they've got a lot of names on that list. But it's hard to know how many of them are actually going to miss the game.
And let's wrap with this. If Washington came to you and said, "Hey Sam, tell us, the key to beating Kansas City," because I've seen anywhere from 6 to 7 point favorites, I think. What is it? How does Washington beat Kansas City on Sunday?
It starts with that monstrous defensive front that Washington has. And I actually think, sorry, the kids just got home. I hope you can hear me okay. I actually think that Washington is pretty well equipped to at least give the Chiefs some problems, because I think the key, and you can say this about any team, right? But it's pressure without blitzing. And if you can do that and still have guys in the back end to cover and still bother Mahomes enough to move him off his spots and make him, drop his eyes down to what's in front of him, I think you've got a pretty good shot. So the success that Buffalo had, I think, was a lot of too deep, shell coverage deep, take away Tyreek, bracket Tyreek, and make Mahomes have, there was a snap. I was just watching that this morning or last night, I'm sorry. And there was a snap where they only had 3 receivers, max protect. And it was only against a 3-man rush, which is just, it was a bad call. But they had 2 receivers go deep against, I think, 6 or 7 defenders. Nobody was open. And instead of doing the short drop off to Tyreek, and they would have got 6-7 yards or whatever, Mahomes just tried to force it a little bit. And that's the sort of stuff, if you can frustrate them, they're so good that I think they sometimes can get bored. Just getting 4 yards, just getting 5 yards. It's just on my mind because I'm reading, Seth Wickersham's book about the Patriots. And I was at the part where they were talking about that first Super Bowl win that they had against the Rams. And it was Belichick. Basically, these guys are so talented, they're going to get bored running up the middle. We'll give them that, but they're not going to do it. This was with Peyton Manning. He'll get bored. We're going to take away that stretch run to the sidelines and make him run up the middle. And he's so smart and gifted, he'll get bored and he'll try to do something else. And that's when we'll get him. And I think that's some of what the Bills and other teams have done against the Chiefs and had at least some success.
Seth, I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man. Tell the folks where they can find you and what you got coming up next.
Yeah, thanks, man. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on. Just at Mellinger is probably the easiest way on Twitter. My Facebook page seems to be down, which honestly I'm not that angry about. This week just
it's a weird world over there.
Yeah, another podcast, and we're gonna do. I think I'm gonna write about Daniel Sorensen. I know that probably doesn't mean much to your audience, but this guy's been giving up some long touchdowns, and people are hot.
I bet. We got some of those in Washington. They're hot about.
I bet. Yeah, I know you do. Yeah, I know you do.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate this.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it.